everybody, welcome to the Art Workshop. My name is Christopher Epling. Thanks so much for tuning in today. PAC TV loves you, and we're so happy that you're here, spending a little bit of your day with us. Have a great show in store for you today. We're going to be talking about a subject that is dear to everyone's heart. If you're from Eastern Kentucky, if you live here, if you've grown up here, if you know anything about our region, then you know a little bit about coal or a lot about coal. Today's episode is dedicated to coal, and in specific, we're going to be talking about an incident that we want to show support for here on the channel. Now, a lot of the times whenever incidents happen that are a little controversial or political, those things we really don't want to dwell too much into what side says who and what side says what. But what we do want to talk about are our people are suffering. So in Harlan, right now we all know that there's a lot of miners who are experiencing a lot of difficulties in terms of being laid off for no reason, pay being just cut, and there's protests involved. And these protests are being conducted in order to show that there is, accountability for large corporations and their workers. And we are no stranger to that here in Eastern Kentucky, and we're certainly no stranger into what mining means to us in terms of a means of life and in terms of a means of establishing a extraction-based economy that we all thrive for, and we all the backbone of our economy, really. So today in our episode, we're going to focus on drawing a miner, and all you're going to need in terms of materials, which we'll go over in a second, is real simple. I'm using tone paper. So the paper that you see here looks a little toned. It looks white maybe on your screen, but there's a tone to this. Real fast, the materials, if you don't have these at home, it's okay. All you really need, like we say, is just a pencil and a pen. I'm using various brush pens. Brush pens are ink reservoir filled ink cartridges that fill up the ink inside here. And so you don't have to throw them away. They're reusable. Be using a few of these. Of course, I'm going to be using a pencil. This looks like a big, weird pencil, but this is a pencil. And I'm going to be using an eraser. It looks kind of like a pen, but it's not. I'm going to be using an assortment of ink pens here. These are all different in terms of the size of the tips here. So the numbers are to signify how big the tips are on these pens. So that really, we're not getting too much detail about that. I'm also going to be using some white paint. That'll be explained in a little bit later why we need white. But we're going to be using all these materials together in order to create our miner. We're also going to be using a brush. The brush will be used to apply the white towards the end. So let's get started. Now, for this particular piece, we are actually going to be looking closely at a profile shot of a miner. With profile shots, you start out using a method known as the circle method, which I've talked about many times before. So I'm going to start out by just sketching out the circle. You do that at home with me. So we have this circle sketched out. It doesn't have to be a perfect circle at all. This circle helps give us a base to draw from. So for the profile, we drop down. We make this little area, which will be the chin, okay, of our miner, coming down just like this. So you circle here, the chin part here. So down here will be the neck part coming this direction. So now you can see how this is starting to form a person a little bit more. So if you're following along with me at home, you can tell how this is starting to come about. Now, one of the most important aspects of this particular subject matter, as I'll call it, the miner is going to be the mining hat. So we're going to have a hat come around the edges up here at the top, and then at the top right here on the side, of course, we have the lamp that goes on the miner's hat, which will go about right here. Again, I'm just drawing a circle, sketching this out very lightly, and I want to make sure and not be too precise here, because we're not looking to draw something that is going to be perfect the first time around. The goal is for us to design this from the ground up. So now we have this general shape that looks like a person. The cap can be worked with. We will work with that a little bit more. as we go along. Now from here, what I like to do with this particular pen anyway, or pencil, I can actually go in and start to put in a few detail that's a little thicker. We're going to be doing some erasing. Starting down here at the bottom of the chin, I'm going to darken this in. As you can see, I'm starting to darken that in a little bit more down below. And what we're doing now is starting to put some fine detail. So the miner has a shirt on. This is what this is here. So you can just add some squiggly lines at the bottom. The jacket is going to come to a V, real simple. A V down at the bottom. Up here on the side of the neck of the miner, we're going to have a cord which supplies the lamp. So this cord is going to come down off the shoulder, just like this. And then the part of the miner's shoulder coming off to the right and down here to the left. So now you can see how this kind of all comes together to form the shape of the miner. So now let's go back up here to the top side to the right. We want to get the ear part. The ear should probably be about right here on this miner, okay? And we want this to be consistent on both sides. So with this being the ear, as you can see, the hat sort of comes up a little too tall, and that's okay. A lot of times whenever you're using these methods, you're going to find that you're going to have to make readjustments, and those readjustments are fine to make. You don't have to get too detailed in erasing everything. We'll just get rid of what we can for now, and at the end here, after our ink dries completely, we'll get rid of the rest of the lines. So don't get too overwhelmed with making things perfect straight out of the gate. A lot of artists do, and you can really seriously hinder yourself as an artist trying your best to make things look as perfect as possible the first time. There's a great man that once said, you know, there's no such things as mistakes, only happy accidents. And so when it comes to art, it's very true. And that great man, if you don't know, is Mr. Bob Ross, right? So coming up on each side now of the man's head, we're going to be showing his face first. Before I draw the cap, I actually want to go ahead and work on his face. Now you have this large portion of this circle that we used down here at the bottom to form up the head, and we will go ahead and get rid of some of that right now since we don't need it, and we'll get rid of that the best we can. And once we have that, we have what now starts to look the form of a human, okay? Now from here, what we're going to do, we're going to draw a line coming straight down the middle, or sort of in the middle, as close as you can, right here, down the center line of the person's head. The nose is going to be here, and if you know anything about mining can be a very, very dirty profession. Coal dust is an inevitable part of mining. So when a coal miner goes underground to work and they reappear from those dark and very deep areas under the earth, under the ground, I should say, when they reappear, often they are covered in this dust from the materials that they're mining. And with our miner, this is no different. So now we're going to be sketching in some of the detail for the face. Here for the lip, the upper lip, okay, I'm going to keep that dark. The bottom lip will be a little white. The nose here, the tip of the nose is going to be white. His look is going to be one of concern. He's tired. He's putting in a very long shift. Now, as we move to the top, this is the reason I let this off, is that the hat, okay, can be applied now. And what we can do is we can range and see, get an idea of how far out to take this light. So before I had it pretty high up. This time I want to move it down some. And then the helmet, I call it a helmet, I'm sorry. The mining cap can come up. And then we're going to make the light actually a little larger. Notice I'm not focusing too much on making this look perfect. I'm simply laying down lines for art here, okay? I just want to have some sort of line there to represent what it is that I want to do. Now, From here, what I'm going to do before I ever start inking anything else or doing anything else with this, I'm going to grab my brush pen. With the brush pen, I'm going to go in and I'm actually going to start really laying down some heavy, 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 heavy blacks. And you're going to see how this is going to start to form the shape of whatever it is that I'm doing, which is going to, of course, be the helmet. And later on, when we use the white, we can go back in and we can reshape it and really get some of that detail in. And we want the cap, the front part here, the black part to be to come all the way across the top of the helmet. I keep calling it a helmet, I'm sorry, but the miner's cap, and we want this to come all the way over. We're shadowing this in. We're just going to have fun with this. The eye here is going to be very bright, so we want the eye to remain very bright. So I'm not going to put as much detail in there with the ink from that area. And actually going to try another brush pen. Maybe it'll be a little bit easier to work with than this one. Who knows? We'll see. All paper's a little testy. Some paper likes to hold ink differently. So we're going to be taking this across now, down. We're going to be masking out the areas that we're going to be using. And we're going to be tracing over some of the areas now at the top, the helmet. Coming down, I keep calling it a helmet. You're just going to have to excuse me for that. His light, this is where you want to try to be a little bit more careful in terms of making it as circular as possible. It does not have to be perfect. This can be a interpretation of a miner. It doesn't necessarily have to be perfect in terms of it being a profile shot of a real person. This can be an art piece. This can be a interpretive piece, however you want to go about it. Now the nose here at the tip, I'm going to be erasing this line that we made going down the center. That will be gone here pretty soon. The eyebrows, of course, are going to be highlighted white in a minute, but I want to go ahead and make those lines in there. And then the sides of his eyes, of course, keeping those eyes nice and white and crisp, because if you've ever seen the iconic, usually an iconic image of a miner, when they come out of being underground, their eyes are just so crisp and white because of all the dust. And the dust will highlight those whites, and you'll see those effects, just pop out. And so that's what we're going to try to do here. We want to keep these areas that we've drawn in as light as possible. So we're dropping down now here. We're going to put the top lip first. Top lip will be darkened in black. We want this to be completely black all the way across. Then his bottom lip here is going to be white soon after we add our detail. And below his chin, all of this area here, we're going to have this to be darkened in. So there's a lot of ink that needs to be used in forming a miner because of those elements that we talked about. And we want to be sure and cover those elements thoroughly all over the painting. So I'm going to go back again, and this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to be using the brush I started out with. See if this is a little bit more cooperative in terms of squeezing some of this ink out. These cartridges sometimes like to dry up on us. There we go. This is a little better. Add some more ink here. So this main bottom piece going all the way across the bottom of the helmet should be darkened in, okay? All of this should be. Because when we add the white later, this is what's going to stand out. And we're going to highlight certain parts of this to make it even more substantial. Underneath the eyes here as well. Pretty much the entire face is going to be darkened in. And what I want to try here in a second, and it just hit me what we could do, which might be even more effective in a way, is to pull some graphite out. And I think I brought some with me, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, I did. And so with the graphite now, we can go in and we can actually start to really put in some of these lines. And we can mix this as a mixed media. So what we're doing now is we're actually taking two different forms of a medium. And a medium is whatever you use to create an art piece with. So as we've talked about on the art show before, a medium can be crayons, it can be colored pencil, watercolor, whatever it is you choose to work with. And we're going to go in here now and we're really going to focus in on getting these very, very, very distinct lines formed around the bottom of the eyes and around the eye portions, like the lids, the bags under the eyes, and even some portions underneath the nose here as well. And the more of the graphite that you use, the better, because we want to really, really accentuate the job that this person performs on a daily basis. And the job that this person performs is a very dangerous job. And this job is one that requires them risking their lives every single day just in order for us to be able to turn on the lights and have electricity to generate our, to charge our iPads or cell phones or whatever it is that we need, and or just basic, essentials of living, such as sometimes even heat, right? So we take these things for granted sometimes. These things that exist do not just exist for nothing. There's people out there who are helping to work to make sure we have these things, and then these people need to be respected. And it's a profession that needs to be respected. And I don't want to get political with this at all. I do not, as a station, we do not get into politics, but we are a station that is focused in Eastern Kentucky, and a huge part of Eastern Kentucky is mining. It affects every single aspect of our economy in every way. Even if someone says, well, no, I have an aunt who works at, let's say, one of these dollar branch, dollar store, Dollar Tree, whatever you want to call it. What do they have to do with mining? Well, there's miners that come in there and spend money, and that money is what's used to pay wages. And if there's no money being generated from any jobs, then there's no money going around to pay wages. If you can't pay wages, you can't have stores open. You don't have stores open, you don't have an economy. It's that simple. It's basic economics. And just like if you think about the Alaskan fish trade, if all of a sudden, if you don't know, Alaska, there's a huge fish trade off the coast of Alaska. So fishermen go out, they harvest fish, they bring fish in, they sell those fish. Those fish are distributed across the nation. It's a huge fishing industry. And if one day someone was to come in and say, okay, fishing's over, we're no longer fishing, we're not going to do it anymore. All those people who live there, who have families there, what's going to happen to them? And that's questions that need to be asked. That's not necessarily a political question. In my mind, that's a sociological question. That's a basic rights of humanity question. What happens to people when you take away their livelihood and their sustainability to pay their bills and take care of their families? What happens? And you know what? I don't have the answer to that, especially for here. A lot of people have been trying to find out what to do. There's been a lot of really good ideas that's been suggested on what could happen and what could potentially take place in the form or what we call replacement economy. And what that means is that, if you take away mining, well, what's going to be left? So far, there's been a lot of really good ideas, I think, but none that's at the level that what mining produces. Mining is a huge industry, and if you were to really look at the numbers about what all mining helps facilitate in terms of tax revenue and in terms of just supporting one's family, what do you replace that with? You can't necessarily just replace it with anything and expect everything to work the way it used to. Now, see, we've laid down the graphite. Now you can see how the miner is dirty. You take your finger if you want with this. You can move it around. You can add more detail. Now, what we're going to do is, after we've smudged this just a little bit, okay, we've got the smudge lines in. We even want to put little smudge lines across the nose. We want to put a little bit of, even in the eye part that I suggested, we want to keep nice and bright, because we're going to use some white paint in a second to really highlight that. But what we'll do is we'll go ahead now and put some of this black graphite behind the miner, going all the way around. I'm just holding the graphite at an angle to the side like this, so that the flat surface is what's being applied to the paper. It's not the pointed surface, it's the flat surface. What happens with that is you get this effect where you have more of the medium touching the paper, and you can start to have a larger surface to deal with and control. And once we've done that, we've left, you can see how my fingers are actually, and imagine being covered in coal like this all over your body after a hard day's work, and here I am just moving graphite around on a piece of paper. All right, so now I'm going to grab some of this white ink, and this is really where I think the purpose and the true meaning behind what we're trying to do here can pop out, and hopefully will pop out. I'll use a little bit of this, and I'm just going to spread it down the side of the page here so you can see. I'll use my finger to smudge it some, just like that. So as you can see how it kind of moves along and gets a little dirty as my finger keeps on blending it in. But the goal was not to use my fingers, though, here to color with this. I brought in a brush, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull a little bit of this white paint out, and I'm actually going to go in here now, and I'm going to use the brush to apply some of the highlights of where the highlights may be on this miner after they've had this experience underground all day working. And you can imagine, I don't think anybody who's never worked underground could really imagine what it's like. But when you come out and you're covered in your work, essentially you're completely covered in your the minerals that you've been working all day very hard to extract. Your job is taken home in many forms. Your job is taken home not only in how you look, which is covered in coal dust and dirty, but you're also taken home in the form of your health. Because if you can imagine all this I just placed on this paper, if I were to take it and crumble it up all of a sudden, and I were to breathe it all in, now granted it's not coal, it's not good for you. I imagine it's not good for you to breathe a lot of graphite in and inhale that all day. But we ask miners to do that every day, just so us, you and I, the consumer, can have that AC going in the middle of August. And just so you and I, the consumer, can have all the essentials we want and need and think we need, through our daily living. So I think we've captured the essentials of what we hope to do here. I want you to please take in consideration if you've followed along with us with this particular piece. Maybe you have a rendition of a minor that you've done on your own and you'd like for us to air it. We'd love to see it. We'd air it right here on the show. Just send it to our email address at piketv99@gmail.com, and we will take that and show it here on the air and brag a little bit about your interpretation. And if Cole's important to you, then here's your chance to show exactly how important it is to you by sharing your art piece on what Cole means to you in our region and living in our region. So I think we've pretty much covered this for today. Charcoal's a great medium to work in. Pen and ink's a great medium to work in. Combine all that with a little bit of white ink, and you're left with something that you could take home. Always sign your work. That's a plus. And I'll throw my signature down at the bottom if it'll actually work this time. This pen gave me trouble earlier. There we go. Sign your work. So we'd love to see your work. Please turn it in. Thank you so much for being with us today. We appreciate you more than you know. And until next time, I'm Christopher Epling. On behalf of Pike TV and the Art Workshop, keep drawing.